Today we're talking about one of the basic principles in making a painting, which is thinking about the big picture, the overall quality or message in the painting that communicates something that the artist experienced or enjoyed, wants to communicate, that they want to communicate with their audience. So today we're painting on location down on the waterfront in Boston at a park called Christopher Columbus Park. It's a really striking park because you can see the skyline of Boston, and it looks good at any time of day, any type of weather condition. Today's weather has a lot to do with how the painting is put together. The light has just come up. It's a kind of intermittent day where sometimes we see bright light, sometimes we see flat or no light because of the clouds. And the artist, when they're thinking about their painting, has to make a decision early on which type of light you're going to use. If you have something that's changing all the time, it poses a problem. And the problem is that as you're painting, your light will disappear or change dramatically, and you start to incorporate those changed characteristics in your painting, and it often goes awry. So just remind yourself as you're starting your painting on location to make a few key observations about the weather. The first washes that you saw were light tones. The light is striking these distant buildings. I wanted to capture the light tones first, the lighter colors of the Customs Tower and the other buildings that surround it against Boston's skyline. So that light ochre, light blue, and then I followed that with a graded wash, a little darker on the left side, a little lighter on the right side for the pavement below. The wash that you see me doing now is portraying that very transient sky. It's one moment it's cloudy, the next moment it's got some blue sky showing through. It's a very dramatic sky, and making it a little darker with a few more clouds rolling in against these sunlit buildings is a good opportunity for drama in this painting. So that's why I've painted this darker cloudy sky second behind the lighter buildings. The wash that I'm beginning now is my main midtone. It's a strong midtone comprised of several things. One is a building that's behind all of this, and in front of that building there's an awning, and in front of that awning there's some trees. So I'm doing it sort of all together. The colors are mixing as I'm painting it, greens, yellows, and some brown to reference the building behind. Doing it in this way ensures that it'll read as one strong shape and actually one strong tone, which in turn, this tone makes the buildings behind look even more dramatic. So there's a purpose for doing it this way. You can see the completed mid-wash now with basically the shapes of the trees, the profile of the building behind, suggestion of the awning and the shadow under the awning, all done while the paint was wet. It's since dried, and I'm adding very dark suggestions of figures, small figures to give the buildings the scale that I want. And I'm putting figures near to us and the midground, and then some in the far distance. This is a great way to give the feeling of a crowd or a busy scene. And it's definitely busy in this area in the morning. A lot of traffic, foot traffic. I'm doing it this way because of a couple reasons. One reason is I know that I can follow up this dark with some brighter, stronger colors and have it read as though the figures are sunstruck, being hit by the bright sunlight. And it gives me a chance to use a little darker edge on the shadowed side of these figures. The second reason is it's just so much easier to paint anything, building, figure, whatever, as a positive. In other words, instead of cutting around those shapes, leaving them as whites, I opted to paint behind them and then paint the figures a little darker on top. Adding some smaller elements, decorative elements now to the awnings, the stripes on the awnings. Now some of the facade work on the customs tower and buildings behind. And this is detail work, so I'm using a smaller brush and trying to minimize the amount of information but still have it record the interesting aspects of these buildings. Also, what this is doing is it's extending that midtone up into the painting. So you'll feel a connection, visual connection between these darker elements in the buildings and the dark element in the midground. Connecting your midtones and darks in this way is a technique which works to strengthen your painting, make it feel more unified, make it feel make it hold together better. You can feel this building right now that I'm painting, there's a sort of gap between the midground and this building. As I extend those shadows, darker sides of the building upward and in the form of windows or window panes, it connects those midtones and there's a stronger connection formed in the painting. All these decisions, however, are kind of geared towards the strong light that we feel coming into the scene from behind. The darks, the strength of darks that I use, the amount of contrast, the brightness of the color, all related are used to promote this strong light coming over my left shoulder. And we'll be adding other elements to strengthen that as well. Yeah, so now you can feel the character of the buildings, and the benefit is you have this dark running up the buildings, connecting it to the midground. I'm going to continue to paint some of those details, but I'm certainly not going to paint every little window or every little part of the building. I try to balance that as I'm going with what's necessary to give the building a unique feel, describe some of its character, more importantly describe the light. This is all done with a smaller brush on dry paper, so there's a lot of control. Now I'm going to start to, well, I painted the shadows. You can see the shadows moving from our figures left to right. This is another really important aspect of the painting because it's creating the direction of the light and also the intensity. The shadows are quite dark and quite long. These two things combine to give us a real sense of the position of the sun behind us and to the left. I've lifted out a couple squares in the upper left there. Those are banners belonging to a pole. You'll see that these create a feeling of perspective as I add some lighter elements to that. Now I'm going to be moving into the smaller figures with some brighter colors. This is done with more opaque paint. The paint that is coming right out of the tube. Some cases it's a red, some cases it's a blue, some cases it's a white and these colors are applied with a small brush and sometimes blurred or um, blended into the dark color that supports it. Start off with some highlights on the shoulders. That's always helpful to be able to understand where the figure begins and ends. This is detail work too, but I feel it's important detail because I want to get a feeling of a busy scene. I want my figures to feel animated, so I try not to overpaint them. If you look at the figures, they tend to have blurry legs, or their legs are not quite touching the ground. This helps them to feel animated. A few warm colors, reds, and later some blues into the clothing helps to make it a more lively area color-wise too, which draws our attention. So at this point, the painting is starting to have a finished look. And I'm cautious at this stage because it's really easy to add too much, to just keep going without any concern for economy. So I slow down at this point and I find myself stepping back from the painting often to see how the big picture is working, see how things are holding together. If there's an area that's standing out, for example, this banner is a little too bright, so I'm just washing a light color over it and maybe softening the edges. I want more attention on the figure, so I'm going to introduce a few more brights into that middle group, bringing down some white poles which are supporting these banners. And look, I've stopped the pole midway. It's in the finished painting. You won't feel any real unfinished quality to it. I think this sort of thing is interesting in painting, where you can do a hint of what's going on, and it's enough. So this is Christopher Columbus Park on a bright sunny day.